Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me here today. Bill has asked me to speak, and he's given you some of the reasons. The topic of my speech is what should be the involvement of the federations? But I'm actually going to answer it from the point of view of the organisers of the races, because you've already heard the President start to talk about why you should be interested in what is termed in Britain Joe Jogger, the person who will run a race in 4 hours 30 minutes rather than 2 hours and 4 minutes. From our point of view, what is it that we need from a federation, and why we should be interested in a federation interacting with us? That's the question that I'm going to try and deal with here. And I'm going to do that in a few phases if I can. First of all, just to talk to you about the London Marathon, a little bit about how we came about, our background, what I would like to think is a success story, and thank you for your kind words there, Bill. Talking about what our relationship is with our federation, and maybe some models of what the relationships should be elsewhere. And finally, if I've got a little time, just a quick whip through a picture story of the London Marathon for those of you that maybe haven't seen it. The background to all of this is that the modern trend is that the mass participation races, the most successful around the world, are not organised because of federations. If you look at the World Marathon Majors, the 5 of the most successful races around the world, New York, Boston, Chicago, Berlin and London, none of them are federation owned. In France, in Paris, ASO, who are the owners of the Tour de France, organised the Paris Marathon. Recently, IMG, one of the world's largest sports marketing companies, has moved into ownership of mass participation races. In Britain, the largest series of races is organised by a private charity, Cancer Research, who organise a series called Race for Life. In America, Race for Cure. If you look around the world, you will see that it is not the federations that have been involved. And why is that? What is the history of that? Well, just to tell you a little bit about how I came to be involved with the London Marathon. And you'll see, and I apologise for this, I am a lawyer. I apologise for that straight away. My background is acting for large sports events. And one of the first jobs that I ever had was working for the London Marathon to argue against our federation. Not, of course, in the enlightened leadership that we have now, Nils in the back, but then the old British Athletic Federation, who were trying to say that you couldn't hold a mass participation event in Britain without their permission, that you needed what they called a television permit. And unless we had that television permit, they were going to stop the race. Now, this is a familiar story that I've heard repeated around the world. I see Dragan here from Belgrade, who's had his own problems locally. In Canada, in India, successful events arguing with their cities and with their federations about permissions to put on that race. And it's as though federations hadn't learnt from the history that they are an enabler. That's what they should be. And here they were trying to step into the shoes of someone saying no, because all that they were interested in, and we see this time and time again, all that they were interested in was how much money they could get out of a mass participation event. I'd like to think that that has started to change, and certainly in Britain we have seen that change very substantially. And maybe as one of the things that Bill has said about learning from best practice, I'd like to think that some of the things that the UK Athletic Federation and the London Marathon are doing together, along with other races, is a model for the future. So what about the London Marathon? First of all, why is it about our sport? Mass participation races. There's a lot of younger people here, not old people like myself, who just think that it was always around, mass participation races. But they forget that until 1976, really, mass participation running was a very small backwater. And in 1976, Fred Lebow in New York decided to celebrate the American bicentennial by taking out of Central Park the New York City Marathon. And it was, as we know, an outstanding success. And Chris Braysher and John Disley, two British Olympians, Chris had won a gold medal in 1956, ran the race in 1979, saw what a fantastic event it was, and came back and said, we can do the same. And we moved very, very quickly. 1981, the first race. I mentioned 1994 to our current finish, because for those of you who know London, we now finish in front of Buckingham Palace. And in British terms, you're accepted once the Queen allows you into what is essentially her front garden. 1996, our new sponsor was a company called Flora, and those of you who know, that is a division of Unilever. And just following on from what was said, Flora is essentially a spread, you know, a butter substitute. And why did they want to sponsor the London Marathon? Because they were trying to connect themselves with health and fitness and saying that Flora was good for you. They saw exactly what you were saying. Our new sponsor this year is Virgin. I'm sure most of you will know Sir Richard Branson's company, from telecoms and airlines to trains. And it's been announced, it's a public announcement, so I can tell you that our sponsorship from Virgin is 20 million euros for a 5-year sponsorship program. So I think we have come of age in this, our 30th year. And our structure is, I think, very different from most events that are out there. I'm Chief Executive of the London Marathon Limited, and we are an operating company, and we are owned by the London Marathon Charitable Trust, a charity, a foundation which gives its money away every year. So I make it and they give it away. It's a very good arrangement. Underneath that, we have various subcommittees to interact with the authorities, as you can see. But this is the important thing, I think, from your point of view, as to who we are. The London Marathon Charitable Trust is made up not of Athletic Federation representatives. As you can see there, only 3 of those members out of 13 have any connection to athletics. 3 of them are from the local authorities in London, 4 independents. We have 1 from UK Athletics, 1 from England, 1 former runner, that's a lady who's actually Joyce Smith, who won the first ever London Marathon, 1 from Disability Sport, and 1 from a government organisation called Sport England. So the vast majority, the weighting within that organisation is not from sport. And when you come down to the operating company, it is even more marked. Only 1 out of 10 of our directors is guaranteed to come from athletics. And our current representative is Tanni Grey-Thompson, who won the wheelchair event in the London Marathon many, many times, one of Britain's greatest ever Paralympian athletes. But again, you'll see that the bias towards there is no athletics representatives. And that's because we are essentially an event. We are a mass participation event which happens to choose athletics as our mode. And that's very important when you then say, what should our relationship be with the federation? Because if we're not owned by a federation, if the federation is not at the core, the federation has to ask, what do we offer you, the London Marathon? What should be our involvement with yourself? And if you can't answer that question, then you'll never get anything out of your local mass participation events. I talked about what I like to say is a success story. I just want to touch on a couple of those because they are listed. But the first one, this year we opened our entry system the day after the 2009 race. We opened the entry system for 2010. 20,000 people could get their entries through that system, and 125,000 people applied in less than 24 hours. So we ended up rejecting over 105,000 applications in one day. That's a success story by any stretch of the imagination. The other, I said 20,000. We have 36,000 people in our race, and the question is, where do the rest of those come from? Well, in Britain there is a tradition that most people who run our race, 80% of the people who run our race, run and at the same time raise money for charity. And last year, our runners between them, they raised for their charities, as you can see, just over 50 million euros. That's a world record. It's the world's largest annual fundraising event. Now, I don't get all of that money. It goes to the charities that the runners themselves choose. But we ourselves generate a profit. And we generated last year £4.2 million, and tomorrow is our board meeting where we will generate and discuss this year's profit, and I'm happy to announce that our record profits will be announced tomorrow, and we will be announcing £4.75 million, so over €5 million profit from this year's race, every single penny of which we give away. In terms of the wider story of success, with the fragmentation of television across the world, it's very difficult now to get what we call in Britain sometimes the water cooler moment, the time when everyone the next day stands in their office and they said, did you see? It happens maybe in a big soccer game, but it also, we say, happens with the London Marathon, because we are the top-rated Sunday show on British television in the mornings. 51% of the people who switch on their television on a Sunday on the morning of the London Marathon switch it on to watch the London Marathon. And you'll see that over 12.5 million people watch at least 15 minutes of our race. And of course, there's all the other added benefits that come from what is the world's largest and most successful mass participation run. We have, as you see, 450 accredited journalists from around the world. We run the world's largest Europe's largest sports medicine conference. 450 doctors come to discuss issues related to sports health, and a very large health and fitness show which has over 100,000 visitors in 4 days. So that's just a little bit about our background. And what I want to talk to you today, because I think this is the relevant thing, is how is it that we do interact with the Federation? Because I think there are pockets there from the rather low beginning that I talked to you about television permits. There has been great improvements in recent years. I'm a realist. We live in a world where federations do bring something to mass events. That value sometimes in their minds may be rather overvalued. And I'll be perfectly frank, in the eyes of event organisers, it's sometimes undervalued. There are examples here. I've talked about the couple of directors that we do have, but I think the more important ones that we're working on actually come from now an organisation which is called Run Britain, and I see its new managing director in the room. And this came about because there was a move from British races who were fed up with a lack of interaction from the Federation. There was a move almost to break away. And I think that the big races said, no, we didn't want to break away. What we saw was we did see some value of working together. And we started talking to each other about common medical standards, common race standards. How do you deliver medical services to 35,000 people? This was the sort of thing that maybe in another sport the Federation would have been doing from the start. But federations around the world, in my experience, were more interested in the medical services to the 200 athletes they might take to a championships than they were to the 200,000 people who might be running regularly in their country. In terms of race standards, we wanted to talk about how you do things and do things in common standards, about road closures, about all the sort of services that were important to our customers, the 35,000 people who were running the race. And when we started talking and we invited UK Athletics in, I've got to say they very quickly understood that this was a dialogue that was worth having, and now with their support they have set up Run Britain, which is a portal, which I'm sure you'll hear from others later on, in which virtually every single mass participation race in Britain can be accessed, and also, more importantly, is a movement for scheduling discussions on all of these topics that I've talked about. And we there are just one of the organisers and one of the members of Run Britain, now under the aegis of Jeff Whiteman, who's somewhere in the room, who's just started Friday. Well, just about to start. It's just been announced on Friday. I think it's those sorts of things that a federation can be delivering and should be delivering. Sean Wallace-Jones is going to talk a little later. I won't take your thunder from you, Sean. Sean's going to talk about, I think, the labelling system that the IAAF have started. And again, it's about that runners will look to a federation for a mark of quality. I think that is something that is very right that a federation can bring in to its relationship with event organisers. Club membership. I've talked about how difficult it is to get into the London Marathon. Well, one of the things that we do is we guarantee every single club that is affiliated to UK Athletics, we guarantee them an entry into the London Marathon. Depending on how many members of your club, depends on how many entries you get. And in recent years, there was an attempt by road running clubs, rather than track and field clubs, to set up their own federation apart from UK Athletics. And we very firmly said as an organisation, we don't support that we support UK Athletics, and that we would not give these entries to anyone that wasn't affiliated to UK Athletics. I think that, from my experience, from everything that I heard at the time, and I wrote personally to every single athletics club saying this, and the feedback I had from people was this was an important reason that they were looking at saying, well, we won't join them instead. I think there were other things that they thought they could get, of course, from UK Athletics. But it's the sort of relationship that a well-managed running mass event can have with its federation. So I think the question is, what is it you actually think that you want from our runners? And why should the runners be interested in you? And I look at perhaps some other models around the world in other sports. First of all, the thing I always hear, the thing I see time and time again is, let's have a magazine for runners. Well, you've got Steve Seaton here from Runner's World, who's going to talk later. They do a very, very good job. I'm not too sure that federations should be trying to do their own magazines when there are extremely good running magazines out there. I don't know that our runners want yet another magazine. What they want are services. They want discount on entries. They want entries into races. They want certain other benefits. I think a very good model is from the Danish Athletic Federation, that if you join the Danish Athletic Federation, you can get a free entry to the Copenhagen Marathon. What a good idea, what a good reason for a jogger to join your federation. One of my clients as a lawyer is the All England Lawn Tennis Club, who organises the Wimbledon Tennis Championships. And what we've organised with our tennis federation, the Lawn Tennis Association, is that if you join the Lawn Tennis Association, you will get access to a special draw for tickets for Wimbledon. As soon as they did that, as soon as we started that scheme, membership of the LTA grew exponentially. Because what the federation had recognised is here was something that runners wanted. They didn't want the magazine that LTA had been offering for years. You could go and buy a tennis magazine from any shop around. But I'm afraid that lesson is still not being learnt by federations around the world. I mentioned the Road Runners Club of America and the US Track and Field. The Road Runners Club of America has 180,000 members. US Track and Field, after a very good year, now has 100,000. So almost twice as many members in the Road Runners Club. And what is it that they get from the Road Runners Club? They get a sense of community, one of the things that we're trying to build within Run Britain. The ability to talk to other runners about your experiences, the people to learn, to train together. That's what runners are looking for. That, I think, is something that you as federations can help deliver, which a single organisation sometimes struggles on its own to do. I talk about database management there just briefly. I think Jog Scotland, 19,000 members now, and as I think is a very, very good scheme. The London Marathon has on its database 400,000 people who have run or applied to run one of our races in the last 5 years. And that data and how you access that data and how you as a federation want to try and manage that data, that it seems to me is an important question. But perhaps the most important question of all that you've got to answer is what's in it for me? Or not me personally, but the race organisers in your country. Why should Dragan be interested in what the Serbian Federation has got to say or got to offer? What is it that you can bring? And I think that's the bit that people have struggled to answer in federations around the world. I think some of the things that we are talking about with Run Britain answer those questions. That all race organisers do have an interest in driving up standards. They do have an interest in a sense of community. And those are things that a federation can deliver. But you have got to persuade us, the race organisers, about how you can add to that and what it is that you can offer in terms of those services. Because the London Marathon is, strictly speaking, of course it's a running race, but most of our runners are not runners. Now, I think that's going to sound strange to you, but a third of our runners have never run a race before, and many of them will never run a race again. Our course, as you can see, is designed to run past the major city centre sites of London, as in any good race. We have the crowds. Something like 750,000 people lined the streets of London to run this race. We finish, as I say, just in front of Buckingham Palace. A wonderful finish. I know, Arpad, you've run, so you know. You're very grateful when you come around that corner. That's you, I think, isn't it, Arpad? Yes. And unfortunately, this is not you, Arpad. This is the winners receiving their awards just in front of Buckingham Palace itself. We class ourselves as an event for everyone. I think this is the difference, maybe, that the federations have got to get into their minds. That some of our runners may not be the sort of people that are members of your local athletics club. As you can see, people running, dragging a dragon, dressed as a, I'm not even sure what that person in the middle is dressed as. Dressed as cartoon characters, carrying ladders, pretending he's a car. These are our runners. Now, Sean, it's lovely to see you running again. Our runners are not the sort of people who are going to go and compete in your 400 metres race next week. And you've got to find a reason to connect to that person. Maybe a dress standard may help. We are a race which spans ages. Our oldest runner, the man on the left, Buster, claimed he was 100 years old when he ran our race 2 years ago. I have some doubts about him. I'm absolutely certain that the man in the middle Mr. Fauja Singh, was 89 years old when he ran the race. Again, not the traditional person that a federation is going to be interested in. He only took up running at the age of 79, apparently to keep his father company. And the youngest runner, well, I can't find a picture of an 18-year-old, so I have found a picture of this gentleman there instead. But we also have children's races, and our children's races have 2,500 children in them, aged from 11 through to 17. We are the largest in many ways. This gentleman ran in a Tim Rogers ran in a outfit, as you can see, which was just over 9 feet, which is what in meters? Nearly 3 meters, isn't it? 3 meters. Again, somewhat different. These people, they got married on the course during the race. We were lucky they decided not to consummate the marriage on the course. And these people, well, that's another story. I actually have got a great picture of these people. They're dressed as a caterpillar, and I have a picture of them at the start of the race, all wanting to go to the toilet at the same time, curled around a tree. And you know if you touch a caterpillar how it curls up. That's what they looked like. But we are a great British event, and ladies and gentlemen, the trick for the Federation, and you as federations, is to work out how you can interact with your great local event, not necessarily a great athletics event, because we are different, as I think I've shown you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.